In this webinar, we will discuss about what is mindfulness, the myths around it, and how it can help us deal with a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am honored by your joining the webinar today. I am sure all of you are busy people and had other commitments. I appreciate your investing time in this session today, and I promise to do my best to make this worth your time. It is possible that some of you may have practiced mindfulness earlier and have some prior knowledge, or maybe attending the session on mindfulness for the first time. It is possible that there are some parts of the presentation that appeal to you and some which may challenge your existing beliefs. Whatever may be the case, I urge you to stay focused on getting that one golden nugget from the session today, which can transform your life. These are very tough times. Trust deficit and stress levels are very high. Employers are not sure whether employee is working while at home, and the employee is complaining that even though they are putting in record hours, their productivity is lower. Employer is worried about BCP, and the employee is worried whether they will be able to retain their jobs. One of the top 10 business houses recently announced that there will be no increments this year. And one of my friends called to say, surely things can't be so bad. Couldn't they have paid 5-10% increment? So the employee is not trusting the employer. Further, there is trust deficit between the supplier and consumer of service. As per one of the projected scenarios, automobile sales will go up as people not sure about the health of the taxi driver will like to travel in their own cars. Sales are down, valuations are down, profits are down, and many small and medium businesses have either closed or staring at bankruptcy. It has been reported that in every week since the start of the lockdown, stress levels have gone up. Let us understand how the practice of mindfulness can help us calm our mind and deal with these challenges. But before that, I have a very serious message for you. It is preferred that you log in through your laptop or desktop. If you can't, please keep your phone on silent and please don't drift to check your messages. The session today is divided into 3 sections, roughly about 15 minutes each. First, in which we will see the history and contemporary scenario of mindfulness. In second, we will practice mindfulness and understand its components. And third, we will discuss how to build mindfulness into our busy daily lives. And lastly, we will take question answers. It's okay if time allows, we will be happy to take question answer during the session also. So the practice of mindfulness has its roots in the secular Vipassana meditation, which was taught by Gautam Buddha about 2500 years ago. Then about 300 years later, Emperor Ashoka did a fantastic job in spreading Buddhism to the nearby countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Myanmar, etc. And then about 2000 years ago, Vipassana disappeared from India, and it was brought back to India by Sri Satyanarayan Goenka, whom you see on the top left in about 1960s and 70s. Sri Satyanarayan Goenka is considered to be one of the foremost teachers of mindfulness in the world, and I had the privilege of learning mindfulness directly from him in 1991. On his right is Sean Fargo, a former Buddhist monk and who certified me as a teacher in mindfulness. Mindfulness has been extensively researched, and a lot of credit for that goes to Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is a doctor with Massachusetts General Hospital, and he studied the brain scans of the meditators and firmly established the benefits of mindfulness. He developed a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is considered a gold standard in mindfulness-based stress reduction even after 50 years. Then you have Daniel Goleman, a renowned psychologist at Harvard, who did path-breaking work in the area of emotional intelligence, and Meng, who brought Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn and Daniel Goleman together to launch a highly popular mindfulness program in Google, which has been running for over 15 years now, and in which more than 40,000 employees of Google have participated. Due to the research and its benefits, mindfulness has become extremely popular in the West. Many books have been written. It's been extensively covered in the media and is being taught in leading business schools like Harvard. Many CEOs swear by mindfulness. I'll briefly share the story of one of them, Mr. Mark Bertolini. He had a fatal ski accident in 2004 and he almost passed away. There was a priest who did his final rites in the hospital, but he had a miraculous recovery. But the pain, he hurt his spine very badly, and the pain was so much that he was prescribed opioids. And that resulted into his being severely depressed, so much so that at a point of time, he wanted to commit suicide. And then his wife suggested, why does he not try yoga and meditation? And he rejected the idea, saying that it is a very girly thing. But then, the situation didn't get any better with medicines, and he anyway decided to give mindfulness a try. And one thing led to the other. Over a period of time after he started practicing yoga and meditation, he was completely weaned off his opioids. And he was so convinced about the benefits of mindfulness that he started propagating it amongst the employees of Aetna. And over a period of time, 13,000 of the 50,000 Aetna employees underwent a program in yoga and mindfulness. I must clarify that this is not the only reason, but one of the reasons because of which the employee productivity in Aetna went up by $3,000 per employee. The healthcare costs went down by 3%. And in the first 5 years of Mark Bertolini taking over as the CEO, the share price of Aetna tripled. And these are figures from an article in New York Times in 2015. You can Google and check these figures. So it's mindfulness is good for health. Mindfulness is good for employee engagement, and mindfulness is good for profits of the organization. Here you see Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey practicing meditation. There is something which is common about Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey. It may not be apparent at first sight, but both of them are self-made billionaires. Oprah Winfrey, in fact, comes from a very poor family, and Bill Gates came from an upper middle class family, but not like millions and the billions that he has these days. But these people tapped into the power of their mind and their emotions to create immense wealth and happiness for many people around the world. What I'm trying to share here with you here today is that we think of land, labor, capital as the resources, but the biggest resource is our trained mind, and an uncontrolled mind is our biggest enemy. There are many companies, Fortune 500 companies, which are actively propagating mindfulness at workplace, and thousands of employees have benefited from these programs. What is the reason that CEOs, billionaires, and Fortune 500 companies are promoting mindfulness? For fun, for one, it provides clarity in thinking and helps in improving the quality of decisions. It improves communication, helps regulate emotions better, manage frustrations, improve the quality of sleep, reduce stress, improve immunity, make people healthier and happier. It helps people become compassionate and become better leaders. And last but not the least, it is also anti-aging. But in spite of all these benefits, some people wonder, is this the right thing for me? When I started conducting my sessions, one of the people came and asked me, told me rather, that I'm not going to practice meditate mindfulness because it involves emptying the mind. You know, मेरा mind खाली हो जाएगा तो मैं काम कैसे कर पाऊंगा? But mindfulness does not involve emptying your mind. It just involves observing your mind. And when we do the practice, you will realize what I am saying. Some people think mindfulness is very difficult to practice. You need to sit cross-legged, you need to wear clothes of a particular color, or you need to do certain rituals. Mindfulness does not involve any of this. It's a fairly simple practice. It's a skill which one can develop with practice over a period of time. One of the senior leaders in the organizations, one of the organization I had done session for, asked me, is this not going to make me and my employees passive? Mindfulness does not make you passive. Don't take my word because I'm saying it. Practice it and see whether it makes you escapist or makes you more active at your workplace. So these are the many benefits and myths. Now we will go on and understand what mindfulness actually means. This is the definition of mindfulness given by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. Keeping one's complete attention to the experience on a moment-to-moment basis in an open and non-judgmental way. This definition is better understood by looking at the components of mindfulness. We need to pay attention to our thoughts, to our feelings and emotions on a moment-to-moment basis. We need to be aware of our judgments, accept things as they are, and identification and choice, which I'll talk about a little bit more in detail as we go along. Like, we cannot learn swimming by hearing about it. Mindfulness is best learned by practicing it. So I would like to invite you for a practice of mindfulness. Please sit comfortably. If you're taking this session on your desktop or laptop, please switch off your mobile phone or put it on silent mode. Sit comfortably with your back and neck in a straight line. Chin parallel to the ground. Eyes and mouth gently closed. Please focus your attention, entire attention, on the area at the entrance of the nostrils. Focus your attention, entire attention, at the area at the entrance of the nostrils. Observe every breath coming in, every breath, moving out. Remain alert of every breath coming in, every breath going out. Natural breath, normal breath as it is. If it is long, it is long. If it is short, it is short. Keep your eyes and mouth gently closed and observe your breath coming in and moving out. Passing through left nostril, left nostril. Passing through right nostril, right nostril. Or through both the nostrils, both the nostrils. Just remain aware. Do nothing. Just remain aware. Be constantly aware of the breath, the incoming breath, the outgoing breath, incoming breath, outgoing breath. Keep your attention steadfastly fixed on the area at the entrance of the nostrils. Like a gatekeeper, like a watchman, be aware of every breath entering the nostril, aware of every breath moving out of the nostril. Like a watchman, be aware of every breath entering the nostril, be aware of every breath moving out of the nostril. As we come to the end of this practice, take a full, deep breath, taking in all the energy of this practice. And when you are ready, open your eyes and return your attention to the present moment. As you become fully alert and awake, consider setting the intention that this practice of building awareness will benefit everyone you come in contact with today. Hope your experience was relaxing and calming. But for some people, they find their thoughts swing like a pendulum from the past to the future and back. In case you struggle to hold your attention to the breath, let me share two good news with you. First, you are not alone. And second, holding attention is a skill that is highly trainable and can be learned, much like how we build muscles in the gym. During a resistance training workout, we strengthen our muscles by moving our limbs against resistance provided by body weight or dumbbells. In much the same way, we train our attention by bringing it back again and again to focus on the breath. I would urge you to not get frustrated, but be gentle with yourself when the mind wanders. Just remember to bring back attention to breath with compassion to yourself, and remember that more number of reps you do, stronger you get. Attention training is the foundation of mindfulness. It involves paying attention to what occurs in this moment, being aware of our thoughts, physical sensations, emotions, and feelings on a moment-to-moment basis. Our quality of life is directly proportional to our quality of attention. Once we start training attention, we find that our ability to focus and concentrate at will for a long period of time goes up significantly. When sun rays are not focused, they give some warmth, they give some light, but when the rays are focused, they can even melt metal or rocks. In a similar way, attention training helps us to do deep work, which in turn creates breakthrough solutions. Think of any significant invention of the last century, whether it is electric bulb, automobiles, aeroplanes, computers, internet, robots, etc. Which one do you think could have been created in a distracted state of mind and shallow thinking? So attention training helps us focus and concentrate on the task, do deep work, and finish our work in lesser time. This also releases additional time for having fun with family. Secondly, one can understand attention by also thinking of a flashlight or torch. When you are in a dark room and have a torch in hand, what you see is what you focus the torch on. We normally think 50 to 60,000 thoughts in a day, but we are not aware of most of them as they are going on in our subconscious mind. This blueprint. So when we turn on the torch of attention, we start becoming aware of mental blueprints which are imprinted in our subconscious mind. This blueprint is in the form of paradigms, beliefs, etc. Like a blueprint for a building determines how the building comes up. Similarly, our mental blueprint decides how our life is created. It is because of this blueprint people find patterns repeat in their life. Some people are perpetually facing challenges with money. Others are constantly challenged in the area of relationships. For example, if someone has a challenge with boss, they change the job. But to their surprise, they find in the new job also the similar problem which they had with the previous boss is repeating in the new company as well. What they don't realize, the problem is not due to the boss, but due to the mental blueprint. We are the architect of our life and of our future. By becoming aware of our blueprint, we become enabled to make the changes that are required. Our blueprint is the input and our life is the output. Thirdly, I want to talk about friendship. When we are making friends, we look at having friends who are similar to us, right? And mostly what do friends do? They validate our thoughts. Similarly, our thoughts also look for friends who are similar to them and validate them. For example, if there is a thought in your mind, what if I lose my job? Then the next thought will be of worry. Oh God, what will happen to my children? The next thought will be of anxiety. Oh God, I may not be able to get a new job easily in this gloomy economic scenario. The next thought will be, I am doomed, and one may get depressed. Alternatively, by paying attention to your thoughts, when the first thought arises, what if I lose my job? You may switch it with an empowering thought. What can I do in this situation? Let me make an inventory of my skills. Let me check what are the technology trends for the next decade. Let me sign for this program, which can help me develop new skills and make me more employable. So friends, you see how paying attention to your thoughts can help you be resilient and make the changes in the life. Also, When you start paying attention to your thoughts, you start becoming aware of the judgments that we almost always put on all things. I'll share with you an example which happened recently. When the invite came to host this talk, it was informed to me that it will be done on Microsoft Teams. And I'm not very comfortable with Microsoft Teams. I'm very comfortable with doing webinars on Zoom. But my wife is very comfortable with Microsoft Teams. She uses it extensively. And then I was talking to her that I have this webinar which is coming up, which is on Microsoft Teams. And she said, wow, that's wonderful. It's such a great tool to host webinars on. It's so good. And I realized whether Zoom is good or Microsoft Teams is good, or is Zoom good, Microsoft Teams bad, or vice versa. Is that a fact or is it an opinion? My wife thinks Microsoft Teams is good. I think Zoom is good. Like that, we have opinions of everything. We may think some person is bad, some person is good. This is hot, this is cold. And our whole life is spent in judging people, events, and situations, whereas the fact is those are our opinions and they hardly matter much. And by changing our opinion, by being aware of our judgments and changing our opinions, we can have much peace and happiness in our life. And when we start realizing that it's not the event or the person who is good or bad, we start being more equanimous. We start accepting things as they are, whether it is day or night, winter or summer, pain or suffering. One can't exist without the other. It is futile to hope for winters to last always, or for summers to last always, or for rainy season to last always. The nature is in a constant change of flux. We need to realize that things are impermanent and they will change, and we should be equanimous. Next, as we start practicing mindfulness, we start realizing that we are always looking at ourselves and others by way of labels. I am Ashish, father of 2 lovely daughters, husband to 1 beautiful wife, son of a goddess-like mother, brother of an awesome sister, MBA, living in Gurgaon, working with Limra, etc., etc., etc. But will my identity change if I move cities? Or if I move my employer? Or if I studied from a different college? No. But we tend to look at ourselves and at others through these invisible lenses. So the sales guys are often at loggerheads with the finance team. Operations department may be at loggerheads with the HR guys, and so on and so forth. These identities are so firmly etched in our mind. But as we saw, they are not real. But because we identify so strongly with them, we feel threatened when they are questioned or attacked. So if I am a socialist and someone says socialism is bad, we are willing to take up arms. These identities create barriers, and help us forget that we are all interconnected. If the hand thinks it is different from the leg, picks up a hammer and hit at the knee, and thinks that, oh, I didn't get hurt, what would you say? It sounds ridiculous, right? But we don't find it ridiculous when one department fights with another and thinks that the company is not getting hurt. We can only hurt someone as long as we see them as different from others, from us. But the point here is to become mindful of the narrow entities which we subconsciously have, drop them, see ourselves as a part of a greater whole, and realize that we are all interconnected. One of the most profound components of mindfulness is exercising choice. Our conditioning may make us believe that we don't always have a choice, but we do. Once we develop the ability to pause and pay attention to what is happening in the present moment, we start finding out not one, not two, but many ways to respond to a trigger. That trigger could be poor health or loss of a dear one, or an irritable spouse, angry boss or customer, poor financial situation. When you become mindful, you develop the ability to pause and choose to respond rather than react. And therein lies our freedom. Now let us look at the definition of mindfulness once again and see if this makes more sense than what it did when we saw it first time. Keeping one's complete attention to the experience on a moment-to-moment basis in an open and non-judgmental way. Now we come to the last part. Many people come and ask me, Ashish, this is a great practice, but we don't get time. We're already so busy. How to find that 10 minutes to practice mindfulness? So I'll share with you 5 simple steps which will not require you to take out any additional time, but help you to build your practice of mindfulness. First is paying attention to your breath. The first thing that we do when we are born is to breathe. And the last thing we do in our life is to exhale. But in between, we hardly pay attention to our breath or breathing. Whether you're walking or engaged in any routine daily activity, you can take out 1 or 2 minutes to just pay attention to your breath. You can count your breath. There are many practices around it. You can work on them. I could discuss them later. Next is be mindful of what we are eating. Most of us eat 3 meals in a day. but they are all so rushed. We are either watching TV or checking WhatsApp messages or talking on the phone or sometimes driving even. The entire universe comes together to prepare the food for us. The earth element, the water element, the air element, and the fire element all come together to produce the food, and then farmer toils day in and day out to grow it for us, and then somebody lovingly cooks it for us. But we hardly pay attention to the food that we eat. Please feel the food, smell it, touch it, chew it well when you are eating. That is one thing that you can, if you can do, it will not only improve your health, it will also help you build mindfulness. Most of us, I see people gulping food or swallowing food, but there is no grinding machine in our stomach. The only place where the food can be ground is by teeth in our mouth. So please chew your food well, and that's a great way to practice mindful eating. Next is, please spend mindfully. A lot of my friends tell me they're preparing to do revenge shopping after the lockdown gets lifted. I would humbly urge you to be mindful of what you are spending. Even if you can afford it, please don't buy things which you don't need. Sometime in 1970s, the rate at which we are consuming resources surpassed the rate at which Mother Earth can replenish the resources. So in a way, we are fast depleting all the resources of the earth. So by consuming less, not only will we become happier, we will also preserve our planet Earth. I had the good fortune of meeting Mrs. Sudha Murthy recently, and she was sharing that for last 25 years, she has not bought anything except food, books, and medicines. And believe you me, she's one of the happiest and liveliest persons I have ever met. It's a myth that by consuming more or buying more, we become happier. Please try and see that by consuming less, you will become even more happier. Last, laughter yoga. It's a great way. Sanjukta, I'd like to do a time check with you. It's 3:53. If time allows, we can practice laughter yoga for 1 or 2 minutes. Otherwise, I'll close in another minute or two, and then we will open for question and answers.
Sure, we can do the laughter yoga. Would it be okay for a minute? How long would it take?
1 or 2 minutes, not more than that.
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's practice laughter yoga. It's a great way to practice mindfulness, because when you are laughing, it is very difficult to hold any other thought in your mind other than to laugh. If you can, please open your cameras. It's good to see each other laughing, and that adds to the fun. There are a couple of exercises which we will do. Science says that the mind and body cannot distinguish between the real laughter or fake laughter. So practicing laughter is has equally beneficial results as real laughter. So let's start. I would urge you to hold your hands and start laughing. This is called Namaste laughter. Please unmute yourself. Please open your videos so we can hear some laughter going. We can get some energy going. And after that, we will practice milkshake laughter, in which you imagine 2 glasses of milkshake in your hand and you pour milkshake from one to the other and laugh while you're doing that. Where we will talk on phone and we will laugh. Wow. Oh, that was good. This you can practice by yourself, or just have good fun with your family. And in these times when I see so much of gloom around, it's a good way to bust gloom. And the last is to have an attitude of gratitude. I'm very grateful to Anviti and to Tajin Group for offering me this opportunity to interact with you. I'm grateful to each one of for being such a wonderful audience. One thing about being grateful is when gratefulness, the feeling of gratefulness and stress cannot be together. So the more you start cultivating an attitude of gratitude, you will find that stress will start going out from our lives. We are a very small component in the entire scheme of the universe. When you start being grateful to everybody who contributes to our life, you will find that you start becoming much happier and much peaceful. As you have been a wonderful audience, I would like to offer a bonus to you. For those of you who are interested in learning more about the practice of mindfulness, I am offering 4 more sessions of mindfulness practice with me. It is completely complimentary. It is completely voluntary. To avail of the bonus offer, you can send me a WhatsApp with your name, your email ID at my WhatsApp number, which is mentioned here, and I'll send you the details of the and time of the mindfulness session. So we will pause here for a minute. I'll let you send me the WhatsApp message. You can mention your name, your email ID, in case you're interested in pursuing practice of mindfulness. Sanjukta, that brings us
Yes.
To the end of the session, and we'll be happy to take any questions that are there, time permitting.
Thanks, Ashish. And I'm sure there'll be many people who would be interested in the bonus offer. And very soon you would receive a lot of messages. I would request everyone if you can unmute yourself and give a round of applause to Ashish for a really wonderful session. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Ashish. Needless to say, the applause says it all. We really enjoyed it. I personally enjoyed it. And there have been a lot of pings that have been coming in on WhatsApp and on the chats also. I received one beautiful comment right now saying that it was good to remind myself of a golden rule that you can train and control your mind and soul if you want. Come from Dilip. I think it's a really beautiful line. What do you have to say?
Yes, the mind is the greatest asset. I'm an MBA, and when I was in college, all I was taught was financial management, production management, marketing management, but nobody taught me mind management. But if we start teaching mind management in our schools and colleges, that is our biggest resource. And we have seen so many entrepreneurs who have just basis one idea created so much of wealth and solved so many problems for humanity. So it's a great thing. But if the mind is set, everything is set. If you don't have the mindset, a heaven will also look like hell. But if you have the right mindset, a hell may also look like heaven. So it is entirely up to us to train our minds to be happy.
Absolutely. And I received one more beautiful comment. It said that it just simply said that the session has been very relaxing. And that also really adds a lot of value that we could have you for this session today, Ashish.
Thank you so much. It's my privilege. It's my privilege.
I would request if the audience has any questions or if you would just like to share your feedback, you're most welcome to do so right now. Mr. Kriplani, would you like to go first?
Yes, Ashish, firstly, on behalf of all of us, a very big thank you. I think not to the same extent as you, but in a small way, I've been trying to practice some of the things you spoke about for a few years. And what you said completely resonated. In some ways, it resonated even stronger today the way you put it. So thank you for that. I sort of deeply mindful of the importance of what this can do to our life. You spoke about, how this improves our ability to focus on our jobs, and I can vouch for that from my own personal experience. So very big thank you, and I think it's been a really good session. So many thanks.
Thank you, sir. Your comments really mean a lot.
I would request the others to please just unmute your mic and pour in whatever is the first feedback that comes to your mind.
Well, this is Rajesh. I have a question. Well, before
Yes.
a question, thank you, Ashish, for all the good info you provided. I was mindful of the fact that while you talk about mindfulness, giving it a very fancy name, this is a practice which is a very old, ancient practice of India. I wouldn't know, or I would someone need to get it kind of patented. We need to get some kind of certifications from a US or a UK body, not kind of in India as a practice which actually originated from India. I know something or something known as transcendental meditation, which is a meditation which is in practice evolved over the years, is being practiced by yogic gurus and whatnot, and practicing and selling this service in Western countries, not probably sharing it within India. I'm not too sure if people are too averse to receiving this kind of a content. But why should we really need to have a global certificate of this practice when this possibly originates from India? Any insights to this?
No, you're very valid, sir. What you're saying is completely right, and I acknowledge that, saying that the practice originated in India 2,500 years ago. And the reason, one of the good things which West has done is they have brought so much of science to this. So, they studied the brain scans of meditators and firmly established what we knew by experience all these years. So that is how it's good for East and West to get together and bring a very scientific rigor and perspective to this. And it's been adopted by the business. So the Western certifications, they just help in getting the science behind our ancient practice, nothing else, sir. You are absolutely right. This is a practice which originated in India, and that is what I duly acknowledged when I started out.
Thanks, Ashish. Ashish, there's one question.
Yeah.
Is there any specific time to do this mindfulness practice?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So as the name suggests, mindfulness means being mindful or being aware of our emotions, thoughts, and feelings. This can be done 24 hours or at any point of time during the 24 hours. So suit yourself, see what works best for you. Some people like to do it in the morning. Some people like to do it before they go to sleep. Some people like to do multiple times. So one of my friends, he sets an alarm for every hour, and every hour he does a 1 minute mindfulness check for himself. So try out a practice which works for you best. Personally, for me, I do it once in the morning and once sometime during the day, depending on my schedule. But suit yourself. Anytime is good. Anytime is good.
Great. I have one more comment. I know I'm running out of time, but I needed to share this. Before I began the session, I was having a severe headache. I was astonished that after 10 minutes, concentration on a breathing technique, I was feeling refreshed and the pain was gone. I will practice this more frequently now and hope that this will improve my night's sleep. Thanks, Marianne, for sharing that. And thanks once again, Ashish.
Thank you.
And okay, and there comes another question. Does the practice of mindfulness help for people who find it difficult to sleep? I guess that will be the last question that we can take in.
That's a very common question. Almost every session I get this question. So the answer is yes, it will help because it calms your mind down, and that is one of the things which helps good sleep. So yes, it does. But there are a couple of other things which help in good sleep. I'll quickly mention them. Getting a routine around sleeping and waking up helps. Second is cutting down on your TV or device time before you go to sleep. Whether it is 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, you can gradually increase the time. But if you can cut down, news or, checking your phones sometime before you go to sleep, the quality of sleep will get to be much better.
Thank you. Ashish, there have been many takeaways for us. I think right from the attention training that you helped us through to even the laughter therapy that we went in, and at the end sharing the bonus offer sessions. I definitely had a lot of takeaways, and I'm very sure that everyone else also did. So thanks once again on behalf of everybody for taking this time out and having this session with us. It was really nice having you here.
Thank you, Sanjukta. My pleasure. Thank you. We really appreciate this opportunity. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for participating. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Kundani.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you,
so
Sanjukta.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.